Let's do this. I'm amped.
Perhaps if I had my mic on. Welcome everybody to SketchCraft. Oh my god. Folks, this is a Final Fantasy VI Speed Ruffy with commentary. Brandon, say hi.
Hello.
We've been having a really, really fun night of things not working right. So we're gonna move forward. Don't fear, we're gonna move forward. So basically, we're gonna be doing some audio commentary for Final Fantasy VI Ruffy. So my design for Final Fantasy VI print. Here is roughly what we're going to end up with. This is the final. Check that out in all of its glorious yellowness. This is rough. Let me zoom in. You can see it's all super rough. So, let me just bring up the actual video. We'll put this away, and we'll figure out how we get there. We're doing it live, folks. Doing it live! So, this is how we're going to do this. Go ahead and hit play. Brandon, ready?
I am.
Hit play. Alrighty. Whew. So here we go. Right? So, what was that? Oh, that was me messing with that. Okay. So this is the entire process sped up 12 times from real time. I think it took me 8 hours to figure this thing out between the silhouette Ruffy. So the process is this. I sketch this out in Photoshop. I have a silhouette that I like to sketch into. I design the characters in silhouettes, which meaning if you posed, if you posed in a Batman pose and you just saw you in black and white, the silhouette. I developed this process sort of naturally when I was a kid because I hated drawing stick figures. Everyone always said I can draw stick figures, or when you read the How to Draw Marvel comics, the Marvel way, it always starts like with a stick figure that you're constantly like. I never knew, am I supposed to draw over this or do I draw a new version every time? So when I was a kid, I used to sketch things in markers, and I realized I could draw Batman pretty good like this with a Sharpie. Mm-hmm. And then I started using tracing paper, and I put tracing paper over that, kind of sketch the character, and then I'd get a light board. At the time, I had a Light Bright. I used to put my paper on front of a Light Bright and just trace it. Very, very old school. I was a very inventive kid. So, but now I can do this all in Photoshop. This is what I'm doing. I'm just sketching usually between 150 300 dpi, depending on if I'm too lazy to make the document low res. Sometimes I forget. I'm like, why is it slowing down? Oh, I've been working at 300 dpi the whole fucking time. And I'm using a round hard brush. Brandon, you've sort of experimented with drawing like this now, right?
Yeah, this is definitely the only way I'll start a project. I won't ever go back to any kind of other stick figures or anything like that. It's purely this.
I think one of the major benefits to doing something in this style or designing in this style is that, it solves foreshortening. You can draw a blob, say like right over here, the arm, and I know the arm's going to go over here like this. And in my head, I know it exists, And since it already has a template, I can just draw the foreshortening in there versus trying to just work it out like with the line that's coming out at me and you're drawing all these weird viewpoints, that are strange because although, hey, it's really fun to say 1 point, 2 point perspective. The fact of the matter is there are multiple viewpoints in any given image. There's a primary viewpoint and then there's multiple viewpoints based on that viewpoint. So if you try to line everyone up to a single viewpoint, it's going to look fucking weird. You ever done that? Like buildings just jet out of nowhere? Like it doesn't make any sense, right? So we're obeying the rules of fundamental perspective here in that there's sort of a curved surface and, there's three-dimensionality. But we're not trying to line everything up to one viewpoint the way life works. It's fucking amazing. And if you don't get anything I just said, then go draw for 5 years, get back to me. And, So this is me trying to figure out all the characters from Final Fantasy VI. And it's a little bit difficult because the game was released on the Super Nintendo, and all the characters are like tiny little pixels. So they don't really have a lot of clear definition. There is some concept art that the lead artist at Square at the time was doing. Like I think his name is Yoshitaka Amano. Don't fucking sue me for screwing that name up, folks. I don't keep it memorized. But his art style never really looked like the stuff in the game anyhow. He had a very wispy, painterly art style. so I had to dig up, various remakes or renders or some fan art and kind of look at what was sort of figured out for the characters.
Mm.
The last time I played this game was in 1998 when they re-released it on the PlayStation as a PlayStation anthology. I did rent it for a couple weekends back in the day when it was called Final Fantasy III, which is how I remember playing it. And I loved the Ninja Shadow. But back in the day, you could only rent a video game for like 3 days before you owed like $15.
Right.
So I couldn't beat the game in 3 days back in the day. So I never beat it then, but I did. I did get very close to beating it back in '98. But I got very taken with Final Fantasy Tactics, or I was still at the time, and I was playing a lot of tactics games on my PC, if you can believe it, through emulation. So I sort of forgot about it. Went back to endless tactics games. But this is me just trying to work out the silhouettes. Now you can see back here will be the main villain, which is Kefka. And then I thought extra characters like Mog and a few of these other characters, I can't remember their name, would be plushies. And one of the reasons for this is because there's no fucking way I can fit all the characters onto one drawing, man. Like, we're already, how many characters looking at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 main characters already, you know? And there's these things called espers in the game, which are giant mechs. Like, remember Ed 209 from RoboCop?
Mm-hmm.
I like that, like walkers, mech warrior kind of. And I don't have a place to put a giant mech, especially when you start thinking about things in relationships to other people. So I made it, in this case, a little handbag. And make the espers into a plushy handbag that this character will have on. And then I'm thinking about putting some other characters here as plushies on. I think this guy's Mash, that's his name, on the shoulders. And this guy was like the brawler, the big guy. He stops like a giant train or submersible, I can't remember. He stops something big, like with his bare hands in the game, like does the Superman. And then down here will be a Super Nintendo with the controller, and I'm trying to loop the cord off the camera, as you will, off the canvas. Gives a little three-dimensional. The Shadow has a dog, I thought I'd make a dog plushie. And these ways of working in toys and turning items into plushies is just something that I've done since I was in high school. Used to draw these things called still lifes. You ever do that in high school, Brandon? You draw a still life?
Where people are just sitting there and...
People or items. Sometimes it's fruit, right? A lot of times.
Okay. Okay, yeah, with the fruit and the
Yeah.
bowl and shit.
I don't care about fruit. So I get very hungry. I have an inner fat kid. You've seen me get very excited about food.
Yes.
So as a kid, if I saw food, I just want to eat, man. So I used to set up all my video games, and if I didn't have a game, like at the time I didn't have Super Nintendo because I was stupid and picked the Genesis, I would just think of the controller, or find a photograph in the KB's or Toys R Us advertisements, and I would draw those instead. And I'd get into a lot of shit from a high school teacher because she was like, "You can't draw a controller." I'm like, "It's a still life." I get that, if they had controllers back in Da Vinci days, they'd be drawing fucking Super Nintendo controllers. So this is just, I draw Super Nintendo controllers and Spawn figures. And I remember she told me, there's no career in that. And I'm out to prove that bitch wrong. So I love her, but, it was like, what do you mean there's no career in drawing that? So I never got along with my art teachers, if y'all want to know.
I failed art in high school.
So, but I took 4 years of it, and I persevered. And here I am on the internet, still making art. So you can see this. I probably spent 4 hours getting this silhouette Ruffy worked out. You can see I'm trying to scale it down a little bit, give a little bit more room for the background, for the lighting to show through. Mm-hmm. All before I start drawing it.
Right.
It's good times. You have any questions about this process, Brandon, or anything you want to comment on?
I like how you have plushies, mechs, and controllers all intertwined without it like overcomplicating the piece, and also just like bogging it down with like 100 items just smashed in, where people draw like all these 100 people just squished in there, and you're just like, what the fuck am I looking at? Like a Where's Waldo? But
Well, you mean like my X-Men pieces coming up?
yeah, that still has a cool flow. You got villains facing off against the heroes, and there's like, it's like they're colliding, almost like the animated cartoon where they'd run into each other. And same with this one, you got the controller in the front, the plushies dancing around, the sprites where there are, all that, and then you got the villain in the back, very ominous. So
you know how they always say artists have gifts. I don't have any particular gifts. A lot of this stuff is just me, like, sticking with it for enough years. But if there's anything I can attribute to, say, a gift, is good taste. I think maybe like I know how do I say this? I believe I know what I want specifically before I start. Like I want all these details, but I want you to be able to see everything. And at the same time, I don't. Like I want you to see things. If you keep looking, you're going to see more stuff. But it's
Mm-hmm.
still clear. It comes back to when I was a kid. I'd see things Jeff Jarrow drew. Right? Remember Jeff Jarrow, the artist? And he would draw all these insane details, Rusty the Big Robot, but you couldn't see anything. I was like, man, there's just a couple really big things and there's other stuff in there, and I used to get a bit of that from these PlayStation magazine covers that Joe Mad used to draw and stuff. And they'd have all these characters, but they'd also have game screens on the magazine covers, intertwined with the art. And I was like, man, that really works. You could see all these, and there'd be controllers, right? Like, or pictures of the PlayStation, because it'd be like, new PlayStation game. And they put a photograph of the PlayStation. And I was like, they should have just drawn a PlayStation. And I'm sure Joe Mad didn't want to hear that. So, so here I am. I'm happy with the layout. I switched to my little sketching brush, which is just the same brush shrunken down to 6 pixels, 6 to 10 pixels, give or take. I think, yeah, it looks like 6 pixels right there. And I'm just sketching in her body shapes. Now, I know enough of my constructive anatomy to know what an arm's going to look like, what a waist is going to look like.
Right.
So I'm just drawing it into the silhouette and then erasing out those parts right there. So she's drawn through, sketching in a sword. She'll have a little bit of an anime face, which basically means don't draw much of a nose. Big eyes, little nose, or no nose, nose done in color. And then I'm sketching in here like the Esper pieces. A lot of big shapes. This one character at a time, then I'll sort of like shift them and resize them a little bit because the silhouettes work fine, except, once you start sketching it, you realize you have more room than you initially thought, these are
Right.
blobs of paint. They're not accurate.
Or you might run out of space and then you got to resize.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or it just starts to look a little wonky. So, see, I'm kind of working out the zipper. I'm like, where would the zipper go on this thing? I'll put it right where the seat is. Yay. Like, I don't know. I don't plan it out really. I'm like, I'll just make it up as I go. So there, I'm like, is that what I want to do? So I turn it off, kind of go back, look, and then in a second I'll go back to drawing it. Like I'm happy with that direction. Now I can tell you, even though this Ruffy's done in my opinion, I'll probably flip this girl right here with the girl with the green hair because from what I understand, the girl with the green hair is the character you start off with the game. I don't remember that. Like it's been a long time since I've played the game, so someone was like, "She's the main character." I'm like, I don't remember, man. I remember this dude, the thief guy,
Right.
Leon, and I remember the Ninja Shadow guy. But okay, sure.
Yeah, I mean those hardcore fans will let whether or not a certain character needs to look a certain way or be the leader of the whole group.
And Dave used to do a good job of that. Dave Halverson, my editor in chief at Play, the owner of that. I mean, he played enough of those games. He'd be like, "Rob, this character makes more sense over here," and I'm like, "Fine, I'll fix it." So it's a reluctant. Oh, I don't want to do it, but better to do it so you don't hear about it later. Kind of like if you curve a sword, and
Mm.
yeah, right, Brandon.
Oh
So
yeah.
so right there. So she's holding the flames. Maybe I won't change it. I'll be like, "Fuck you, I don't care."
What do I like?
We'll see. I'll get to that point and be like, "Do I really want to do this? Does it really matter?" Because one person mentioned it, but
Right.
usually no. But if she is the main character, we'll see. I did settle on the girl in the front being there because her outfit's yellow and I wanted the background to be yellow. So I thought that tying that yellow into the central part of the image would help unify the golden color of the piece. It's the basic idea. It's very important for me to have this worked out before I start because uh, I don't like drawing things and then when you get to going to color it, figuring out, oh, I didn't need to draw that, or I should have drawn this, or I like to work out all this stuff before I like the color scheme, everything I'm going to do before I go forward, because otherwise, you ever be working on a piece, Brandon, and you kind of hope it works out,
Right.
and then it doesn't.
Yeah. It fails.
Right.
And I mean that's why I know you stress on construction and things of that sort because if the construction's not good, then it's all just gonna fall apart. So
I'm going to give him a super long ninja sword. kind of like Kikichiro from Seven Samurai. Look at that shit. I know my Kurosawa. Now his dog's gonna be a plushy dog. I actually wanted this wolf face, but then I realized looking at it, he doesn't have a wolf. He has like this little schnauzer looking thing. I was like, fuck, I wanted a wolf face. So I had to change the shapes there a little bit. Cartoon dog shapes. And these are still playful shapes here. These characters are somewhere between. There was a Brandon. I don't know if you ever saw this, but when they debuted the Nintendo 64, it's called Project Dream or Reality or whatever, and Ultra 64, and they had a tech demo of these characters rendered in 3D fighting a golem. And because at the time Square was going to make Final Fantasy VII on the Nintendo 64 as an exclusive, and so they used these characters. They made them 3D. And they kind of had like a big head, like a chibi look, like a big head, little body feel to them. And I was just like, oh, that's so awesome, And so I always felt like those shapes, like you ever play Final Fantasy Tactics, they have like the kind of bigger heads with the longer legs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I were to draw a Final Fantasy Tactics piece, I can't change that. I think that's intrinsic to the look of the character. You imagine doing like the Jim Lee version of those characters, and all got like Barry Windsor Smith faces, and people would be like, what the fuck did you do? So I want to give them a little bit I want to retain a bit of that Asian flavor. Asian flavor. That General Chow's chicken food. No. See, that's wrong because it's Japanese and other Chinese people are going to hate me for. It's true.
But nonetheless, you want to keep some of that original designs, but also make it your own.
Yeah, I don't want to just be like, oh, this is
Right.
totally
And
Eastern.
I think a lot of artists have trouble with that, where they will just either go full on manga anime or their own style if they're a Western looking style. And I think you should one use your style, but also blend some of the elements from those characters and designs. But you don't have to either one trace exact images or just try to re-envision the whole thing. I mean, you could take bits and pieces and make it your own.
Yeah, the only way to arrive at it though is to try drawing in a lot of different styles. And the way to draw in a lot of different styles aren't trying to figure out the lines, it's getting the shapes down. You can break any style down to certain kinds of shapes, and then you can apply the style over the shapes. So, do some stuff in Disney shapes, super cartoon, or Hercules style, Mulan style, Lilo and Stitch style, then go and draw some Kill La Kill style anime things, And then you start to blend those shapes together, and through repetition and just preference, you will come and arrive at your own art, your own art stuff. You give it enough time, and you're not trying to be like, this is how I draw eyes now. Then you make a Twitter poll. See how I just fixed that chainsaw into perspective? Just took it and warped it in perspective. Boom. The transformation tools in Photoshop are your friend, folks. Use the wand tool, grab Control-T or Command-T if you're on a Mac, and just start to warp things into perspective. And give yourself a good guide, because this way you're not sitting there trying to draw everything over and over and over.
Right. I mean, I noticed, the bit before, you showed me how to use that. It's just, I would tend to, if my arm wasn't right, I would sit there and redraw, and you're like, hey man, just maybe you lift the shoulder with this tool and just warp the hand a little bit, and then you're done. And I just would be like, fuck, that was it? That was all it took? And you're like, yeah, you're killing yourself for no reason.
Yeah, kill yourself making all these details.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't apply a lot of effort. I'm just saying put it where it needs to be,
Yeah.
I'll get rid of some of these noses or chill them out a little bit. Oh, I'm going to make him angry. Like his little teeth. I want Mash to be huge. I think it's his name, Mash. I want to be just a big guy. And I'm like, am I going to give him the Superman pose, or am I going to keep the hand up in the air? I think I moved toward the Superman pose. Can't remember. I forget. Oh, no, see, I put a plushie right there. That's right, because there's this, one of the other characters is a giant, it's the squid. I love the squid. And then we get to draw a Moogle. This is the fun part. Drawing the plushies is, my reward.
Is it?
Yeah, I enjoy this.
Yeah, at least you have your favorite part. Let's see.
You can't draw them. There's no way to draw them wrong. Catch my drift? Like, there's really no way. Just
Well, I've seen some bad plushies.
well, I've not from me.
No, not
Oh,
from you. No,
all
no,
right.
no, no,
Okay. I don't find them to be that hard. You know.
no. But
Yeah, but if you don't understand perspective or shapes, then I guess you could fuck that up.
right, you have to understand. Just because it's a lot of people don't understand that they make the plushies flat instead of, hey, this has a round belly and round tubular legs and arms and rounded head. They just forget that and they just make everything look so flat.
And then lastly, we have Kefka, and I'm like, I don't know how to. I mean, he's a jester character, and he's got a costume that would never fly. Like the way they design the characters would never fly these days. He's like got hundreds of different colors and because when they create that concept art, it's never going to be that way in the game. It's going to be a little
Right.
pixel. So you can create these crazy designs, and the pixel artists will just distill it down. But turns out, I'm like, I'll make them. Thinking James Woods from Hercules. Remember that Hades?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Not that I was opening up pictures of Hades. Just now that I think about it in my head, I'm like, it's probably where I pulled that from. That's the thing too. You see enough, you start to pull from it, whether you intentionally mean to do it or not. You know.
Right. I mean, I noticed that over time doing flats and things for you and working on videos and stuff with you, I'll maybe draw a chin or eyes a certain way sometimes, and I'm like, ah, shit, that's just like how he draws it. Not thinking about it, just you get used to seeing something and then you incorporate it in your art.
And I think that's the basic outline. So then I'll go in and have to do all these quick versions of flats, and this is going to be real fun to watch. See where we are on the timeline here. We're a little over halfway through. Do you have any questions about any of this stuff, the drawing part, Brandon, or anything you want to? No, you get it. You can
When
draw now. Like
okay, when when you get to your finals, how close to these lines do you usually stay? I mean, are you pretty close to these lines, or do you find that you actually change a lot?
they're pretty close. I mean, if you line them up, you'll find that they're not 100% by any measure, But these are pretty close. See right there. That's where I switched out. So I went and did some basic flats in between on the bottom piece to get warmed up. So I did the silhouette one day, and then I did the colors the next. With this, because it's 300 DPI, these are closer to what I'm going to do. But I'll say this: I improve on hair shapes, details. I'll add little bits, here and there. If I got extra room, I'll throw in as many little Easter eggs as I can, so long as it doesn't overcrowd the piece.
Mm-hmm.
At least as far as I consider overcrowding. You know, um, I remember when I did the Game Fan issue 6 cover, people on NeoGAF were like, "It's too busy," and I'm like, "Fuck, dude." They're so used to those digital painted stuff, the
Right.
paintings that when they see lines, they get confused, by lines. There's been this trend over the last few years to not draw anything with lines. Remove the lines, make it look all painted. And when you remove all the lines, you know what happens? Everything looks the same.
Yeah.
It's in the lines you get a person's signature. You imagine trying to sign your name without a line, it'd be a fingerprint. Every fingerprint looks the same to me, right? I mean, it isn't, but it looks the same.
Right.
They all look like a fingerprint. So, I'd rather see a person's actual signature. But this right here, these basic little things, help me. Now, see, I built that handle just using color because I forgot to draw it. They help me sort of pick the colors I need before I start anyhow. So after you'll go and do the flats, lucky you, then I use this to go and lay in the final color flats. And I found it's better for me to do that versus the flatter because it's hard for you, I think, or any other person when you're doing flats to see the final image. You know what I mean? When you're looking at those many lines, like
Right.
it's hard to see what's connected to what. So I found, and plus, I mean, this will probably take you a few hours. What do you think? 4, 6, maybe
Definitely
8 hours.
less. Yeah.
So just to do the flats.
Just keep adding the hours to it, and I'll
Yeah,
tell you when it's done. Just keep going.
yeah. So, um, it will probably take me an extra hour just to. It's better I do the final flat colors than you. You know, just out of certain fatigue. You know, but this part is relatively fun. I wish this is all I had to do. I wish the world was cool enough to be like, that's an amazing drawing, Rob. They're not. It's never going to happen. But
No.
and I have multiple little flats colors set up now. Like I've two or three different kinds of blacks. Like that grayish down there. I have a couple different grays, and I'm settling in on colors now in my career. I am like, this is the kind of purple I'll use. This is the kind of gray I'll use. This is the kind of black I'll use for these basic colors because at some point it's irrelevant. One doing other. So it just helps to have the colors that I'm sort of familiar with and happy with. And you can see I'm building detail up too in color, like little helmet details. You can just put in a blob of color and be like, oh, that's figured out, versus drawing those lines out. And then I will draw the final drawing over the color version. So any details I add in color, I get to add those back in the lines when I go to draw it. So one sort of informs the other. Likewise, there's things I would never draw. Like I don't have to draw. Let's say there's effects coming off his sword. I don't have to draw that shit. I know I can paint it in. If someone else was going to do the coloring, I would have to draw that stuff in because I can't trust them to actually color that shit. So,
And then for all these like colors you're filling in right now, I'm guessing reference photos open to kind of.
no, 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 no. Yeah, I do have reference of their pictures, but I'm also just choosing from my sets of flat colors. So the first thing I do is I fill in a shape of the character. I lock the transparency and then paint in that. So I don't paint outside the line. See, I
Mhm.
have like a little shape template now. I'm filling in the black. And again, that's one of two different kinds of darker colors that I have set up for black. And then he's going to have orange hair. And that gray in his sword is the same gray that's below for the cable. This helps bring unity in the piece, by the way. When you start to have, the consistent set of colors being used throughout the piece, you can bring unity. If you have 100 different fucking blacks on the piece, it's just going to look like a giant pinata. I can't begin to tell you. And then the lines are tinted red. One is set to overlay, the other one's set to color burn, and I turn the opacity down on the color burn layer about 50% now. That's about the way I'm getting the lines done these days in terms of coloring. If I need them to be a cooler temperature, instead of red, dark red, the lines will be a dark purple. You can alternate between the two. And I have a couple different skin tones. So, and I'll fluctuate between. Don't breathe in the mic, Brandon.
So it's been a long journey to make this, and I guess I just leaned down my head. Uh, I don't know these characters because I never really played this game,
It's the
but
best Final Fantasy, pure Final Fantasy game.
but I basically the only one I know is from Seven, I believe.
Right.
Cloud, the guy with the big sword and the blonde hair and the
Yeah. This
gray
is the
jacket.
this is the one from before that, right before
Yeah,
it.
right. So it's hard for me to really like these characters. I mean, it looks cool. Like this is just cool to look at, but
It would have been great to see a remake of this in 3D because you never got to see these characters three dimensionally. You
like
know,
on the 3DS or like the Wii U.
I'm fine with either or, man. Like that fucking tech demo they made for the Nintendo 64, that would have been great.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, yeah. I mean, I always I like when they remake stuff and they put it on like the 3DS or things like that. So I would probably, if they remade it, I'd probably play it just because I think this looks cool. Um, but I don't know the characters, but I know watching you do this stuff, I'm like, man, I wonder how many people like they know these
oh,
characters
they
and
know,
like,
they do.
yeah, they know.
Oh, they know.
So it's it's like
Yeah. So if I fuck it up, I
right.
never hear the end of it. Um, yeah, I got inside mouth colors. Those are all the same. And what's really great is when you're working for yourself, you get to just make that call. I don't have to sit here and have some fucking editor sit around and nitpick the color red I chose. Um, And you know me, I'm pretty picky, so
Yeah, I was gonna say like if regardless of you have an editor over your shoulder, you're still gonna be like, is this the right one? Is that the right one? Let me try this one. Let me try this one.
But you'll see me do that with Shadow. There's a couple of different ways people tend to color his gauntlets and stuff.
Uh,
So Kefka back there, there's 800 different ways he's represented. No one seems to have picked a definitive style. I kept hoping like, can't Chamba just figure this shit out so I can just fucking, I just know what everyone agrees they should look like. Udon should have figured this shit out by now. You know, he could have done the diligence for us all. He's got these feathers back there too. So
man, his costume is all sorts of Mardi Gras.
that's what I try to tell you. He's super, super Mardi Gras. So it's tons of different textures. It's all over the place.
He's just like a circus
Yeah, he's the
clown.
evil clown. Yeah, so he's the court jester, the evil court jester. So they kind of played off that in Dragon Quest VIII. There's a bad guy who very much closely resembles him. So for me, I'm like Dragon Quest VIII. That's what I see. But again, this is just the Ruffy. Like, oh my god, this is gonna be so much fun to draw.
I can't wait to do the flats. I'm just looking at it like, man, can you add some more, more stuff?
Now, if you want to get some really cool glows, just kind of start with these basic colors and then add an overlay layer. Take the exact same color you laid down and color over that with an overlay, and you'll get some nice saturation. It's a little coloring tip. So I'm throwing some orange in there. And then with the shade, I'm filling it with that dark purple, setting it to hard light or multiply. Multiply, and then let's see. Let's see what I settle on. I can never remember. It changes per piece. Oh, the skin tones I set to a hard light. All the skin tones are set differently. I fill it with shade, and then in a mask, I paint out the shade to get the lighting down. See, here I was like, do I want purple again? Because if you start to put these next to the 4 other prints I did, I was like, maybe I want some green in that shade so they're not all looking the same. So that's me right there messing around with the shade tinting versus just defaulting for my purple shade.
Mm-hmm.
And then me looking at it like, yeah, do I want to go that route? And these are my little filters, lighting filters I've made throughout the last year, really, to help bring a focal point. Folks, I'm gonna be honest. You need to do like 50 of these things before you're gonna be able to really. I mean, I got this down to a formula, but even I'm looking at 5 years ago, I wouldn't fucking know how to do this. Like, and it looks so kind of, the process seems repeatable, but to
Mm-hmm.
arrive at that process is taking a lot of effort. I'm not gonna sit here and lie. So I've settled on this scheme, and now in a mask, I'm just painting in the light sources, which is all going to come from underneath because it's dramatic. Underneath and a little bit behind. So see, look at that. Lighting like 101. It can come from underneath or from above or from behind. Pick one or pick two. Two helps. And don't set the lighting too dark so it looks. How do I say this? When it's too dark and you cut it out, it starts to look like two different images.
Mm-hmm.
Like it needs to be just dark enough. 60% of anything you're doing seems to be enough. Like, the Sex Panther 60% of the time, every time. Like, love to work on a Ron Burgundy reference. Let's see. We're almost done here. And this is me just like adjusting how dark. And then I add an extra set of darkness here, but with the purple. So I can throw in an extra level of shade. 2 to 3 levels of shade. Get you right there.
All this for just the Ruffy.
Well, yeah, but now I know exactly how to make it.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying like this is probably what 10 hours, 18.
No, 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 no.
How
This
many
was
hours
this
is
was
this?
this was 8. But I'll be honest, it probably would have been 4 if I had known the property better. You know. So I'd say 4. Usually they take between 1 and 4 hours. This is one of the longer ones, simply because. Okay, now here I'm doing the lighting. Now this is really simple. All you gotta do is go to your layer properties, double click on a layer, and if you look right here, effects, I set an outer glow and a color overlay. So the color overlay fills anything I draw with the color. In this case, it says cream, and the outer glow is set to like an orange, and then it looks like this nifty glow lighting, and I just get to draw it in. And Photoshop does all the glows for me. Ooh. But the problem is I know I need a secondary coloring scheme down here, and you'll see me add that in a second. And then now I've worked in the strategy guide for Final Fantasy III, which I'll draw right over and recreate it. And then, oh, look at that. Oh, I got the game case. The only way I can justify all this fucking effort is that all this stuff is going into Game Cave volumes 1 through 3. So there will be a Final Fantasy VI review, I think in 1-2. So I'm going to add a secondary lighting scheme. It's going to be this teal blue. And why? Because yellow and blue is a pretty cool combination. Yeah.
And that's just the rim lighting, right? Is that what you?
Yeah, but I think the ground I'll add I'll make the see I'm adding grass here. I'll make like a lighting down there be blue. You can take cool colors and put them in the foreground, you know. There I'm adjusting the shade so it has some color in it. Figuring out if I want it to be more green or purple. And this is not because I plan to do it this way. This is because I'm looking at it after a while and thinking, what does it need? So I'm plussing the art in the Ruffy versus taking all that time to paint the shit and then hoping I can do it in the final piece. Does that make any sense? Like, it's easier to do this here. If this were a full resolution, trying to color it and figure it out, it can take 10 times as long, man.
Right.
So I'm using a gradient map to add the blue lighting. Adjustment layers, gradient maps. And then in the mask, I paint in that lighting so it can turn it blue to purple. And then I do a similar glow technique using the teal color. And I'll add little glow floaties and shit like that.
Which I always liked, and all the little. It gives it like a mystical, just cool energy flow to all the pieces when those little ember things or whatever.
Yeah, whatever the hell that is. Saw it once in an anime. It looked cool. All right, Brandon. You have any other questions? You want to wrap this up?
No, I think I've on the third time we've done this, we've covered it pretty well.
Yeah, well, plenty more to come, and it'll be really nice to go over the flats when you get it done, so you can show everyone how crazy that shit looks like. So we'll probably do we'll do a walkthrough on that. All right, everybody, that is Final Fantasy VI Speed Ref. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Feel free to ask any questions you need. I am here to help you. As always, please subscribe to the channel, and we will see you on the next SketchCraft Live. Peace.
Bye.
Mega Potato.